Erica and Sharon are sisters who began their grief journey in 2006 when Erica's 10-year-old son Austin drowned. Together, they participated in a grief education program, were so moved by this experience, they studied and became specialists so they could help the brokenhearted find recovery. In 2015, tragedy struck their family once again when Erica's oldest son Donovan was killed in a motorcycle accident. Erica and Sharon are committed to sharing their experiences of love, loss, and healing through this podcast. Now your grief specialists, Sharon and Erica.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So when it comes to compounded grief and coping abilities, we expect them to go hand in hand. But most of the times they don't go hand in hand because we don't even know what compounded grief is. It's a term that we don't use, right?
I actually thought you made it up. So yes, you're correct. It's a term we really don't use. And a lot of people don't think about grief in that way, I don't think.
Well, and you said jokingly, I thought you made it up, but the truth is that the medical industry wants to put all these labels on the different type of grief, right? So we have compounded grief, we have anticipatory grief, we have complicated grief, grief that goes past 6 months. We have the stages of grief. Why the hell don't we just call it grief, people?
Exactly.
Why don't we just say it's the experience that your heart is going through? Why can't we just say that?
And it's sad because we have met the people, though, that have loss after loss after loss.
Right.
It's not just the one. Like even us, people meeting us, we don't have just the one. We have Austin, we have our dad, we have Donovan, we have, countless other family members. Yes. So unfortunately, there are people who experience them really close together.
Yeah.
And you're drowning in grief.
Yes. So this came about because I went to a funeral on Tuesday. And as I was sitting there, the tears began to roll down my face. It was a close family member, but not just for the loss of him, but for looking at his family, right? In the 1 year of the pandemic, they have lost 3 people and none of them were due to COVID in 1 year. 3 very close family members. So I just sat there and my heart was hurting for them because it's compounded. Let's add other stuff in there that's not even a death, right? So loss of a job, the anxiety that goes along with the loss that you've already experienced, right? Divorce, relationship breakup, all of that is coming in between and weaving its way in between.
Right. That's what it's like you can't function. How
Right.
are you expected to perform your normal just life duties when you have all of this heavy weight on your heart and your soul? It just seems unreal.
Well, and then you get into you can very easily become that person that wants to talk about it all the time. But okay, Erica, let's talk about this. What happens when you don't have that safe place to go and talk about it all the time? So for example, you've had this compounded grief and loss and grief and loss. Who wants to be your friend, right? And hear that. There's not many people out there that want to just sit and listen to that.
And with our family and their heavy religious beliefs, they just want you to pray about it.
Yeah.
You just got to pray on it. Just give it to God.
Yeah. 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 And a lot of times that's not where your heart is.
No.
You can be like, I don't want to pray right now. I don't want to pray about it. And that's okay, wherever you are, because we constantly have to be telling our truth. So the term compounded grief is exactly that. It's when all of the grief over our lifetime gets compressed together and causes us to go on a downward spiral. Causes us to get stuck in that spot. You and I were talking about this earlier. How many times do we have a client that comes to us and says, I have to grieve this? And they come to us with that one relationship that they just know. It happened to you and I.
Yeah.
I have to grieve this. And we're so clear on what it is. If you could just help me fix this one part of my life. But as you and I got deeper into doing the work, guess what? we get into that bag, and all of a sudden, I have to grieve this, and I have to grieve this, and I have to grieve
Right.
this, because we're not taught how to grieve the process, how to go through the process of grieving and dealing with all of those things so that they don't become compounded.
And we know in general, grief is cumulative and it's cumulatively negative. So when you have your losses from your childhood experience through your adult life, all of that is already balled up into one big ball of hurt in your heart. But when you have those back to back losses, you cannot even make heads or tail of, for me personally, I don't think I would know which. You just know you're hurting. You're just hurting and you're broken and you want it to stop. So you actually do need someone like us to help guide you to sort them out. You
Yeah.
have to start pulling them apart so you could tell which one is the one that is so heavy on your heart, it's stopping you from living your life. And if, once we could resolve that one, then you get a little bit of relief and you can start going after the other ones. But you got to start pulling those apart and sorting them out.
And I want to say this, and I think this is really important. A lot of times we want to look at sorting them out intellectually. We want to
Mm-mm.
go in our brain because they come to us intellectually. Intellectually, they know calling for help is the right thing to do. Getting on the phone is the right thing to do. And here's the one that I need the help with. But the truth is, the one that you need the most help with is the one that's pulling at your heart the most. And that one could have been an experience that happened to you in kindergarten. It could have been an
Mhm.
experience that happened to you in elementary school. It could have been the one where your dad walked out the door, never to be seen again, right? And here you are now grieving the death of your mom, but you have this experience that changed the trajectory of your life forever. So we don't know what that is. And so just what we even tell our clients, don't tell me, look at your list and tell me what you need to grieve. I want you to look at your list and then I want you to put your hand over your heart. And I want you to feel each one of those experiences. When we call them heartstrings, Erica, like you can feel the heartstring being pulled. When you feel it at your heart and it's being pulled, that's the one. There it is. You feel that tug? That's the one you need to work at.
How many times have we had the experience when we've been working with clients and they don't even put the one that
Yeah.
is pulling on their heartstring on the list? It doesn't even make it on there. Like, I see you didn't even put your dad on this list. What,
Yeah.
how's your, oh, he walked out and I never talked to him, from when I was 5. That's kind of big. You want to talk about that?
I need to talk about that. Yeah. So it's something like, I noticed your dad's not even on the list. Oh, yeah. Well, I hate him. He
Yeah.
walked out when I was 5. And you're like, okay, let's talk more about that.
Yeah.
And we say it jokingly because we innocently live our lives knowing that we have this relationship that is not in good standing and it's just okay. We
Right.
just accept it and we go on. My friends, that's a loss. That's a huge
Hmm.
loss. It's a huge loss.
And it's that because we want to intellectualize things and it's sorted out in our brain, we don't want to deal with the heavy stuff. We don't want that seems like so much work to have to relive that. Oh, I'm over it. That happened when I was 5. I'm 50 now. I'm over that. You have no idea how much that still affects every single day of your life,
Yes,
until you sit down and we start pointing it out for them how much they're affected by that and how much they're carrying that with them every day and into all of their current relationships, their kids, their significant other, their friendships. It's present every day.
absolutely. Absolutely. And, a lot of our clients are functioning at their full capacity and they're doing okay. And so what we're trying to say is like, hey, we're not going to go in here and find anything. We're not looking to find anything, but if it's there and you do the work as we line it up, it will jump off the page. It is just so amazing how it actually comes to that, especially for young women, right? So think about this. We as young women, we need our dads. We need our dads to guide us. We need our dads to be in our life.
Hmm.
Imagine a life without your dad in it.
Right.
That is a grieving experience. One of the things that I want to share, because we started on in this show talking about all the different types of griefs that there are and how we want to label all the grief. Um, one of the things that I've been getting instructed from my business coaches to drop the word grief. You need to drop the word grief. People aren't comfortable with the word grief. You, look at your look at your face. Let's use some other words. Let's stick with loss. Let's stick with broken heart, right? You'll get more people in. And I feel that it's our mission, Erica, is to change. I have a mission, and that is to change the world with their response to grief. That's my mission. That's what I'm going after. My goal is to help people grieve. Understand that it's not an ugly word. It's not a dirty word. It is grief, and it comes in all these different forms. There's almost like a grief wheel, right? And it comes in all these different forms, and one of those forms is complicated or compounded grief. Yes, but when we get the label and we stick it on us, then we start to live that way. But let's take out the label and just go, it's grief. It's loss. It hurts.
I absolutely agree. We need to change and the way people think about grief, and we need to normalize talking about grief because Sharon, everyone is going to have a grieving experience. Everyone, whether you want it or not, it's going to happen. And it's going to come, like you said, in different forms. It's not always going to be a death. It might be an illness that your family has been diagnosed with recently, and then you have to deal with that. It might be your child has a mental health diagnosis that you have to deal with, and you're trying to support them through that. It could be that you have an autistic child, a non-typical child. There's so many forms and ways grief can show up for us, but the way that we try to resist talking about it is not doing anyone any service. We got to get out of the mindset that we only have to talk about the positive things on social media. We got to talk about real things, real life. This is what's happening in our real lives every day.
What happens though when we decide not to deal with that loss and we just go on to the next one, right? Is that the worst case scenario? Like, what if you didn't deal with Donovan's loss? Where would you be right now? Could you even imagine?
I don't think I would have. I don't like if I would have stayed in the state I was in, like after when I was like all angry.
Stayed in that angry state. I think eventually it would have subsided. The anger would have probably subsided. That's where we get the time heals, right?
Yeah.
So I think eventually the anger would have subsided, but you would have had this hole.
You know who I would have been? I think I would have been like, I would have been normal in one moment, right?
Normal,
and then semi-normal-ish. I would be normal-ish.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, I'd be sobbing Susan. Like, like one little trigger, any little thing. And then I'd be crying because Donovan would never do that, or I would never get to do that. Like as situations in life would present themselves, like you would be telling me about one of your grandkids. And then all of a sudden I'd be, never have grandkids. That's who I would be, because that's what happens when you don't go after the pain. Anything will trigger it, and it just shows up for you. Yeah. So I would either be sobbing Susan or mad and angry Erica out of nowhere. So I think that's what happens when you don't deal with your grief. You can't control your emotions, and any little trigger, you're just flying off in 5 million different directions.
That made me so sad right now, you saying that.
Could you imagine?
Why it made me so sad, because there's so many people out there that are listening to the show right now, and that's them.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, eventually you have to hide the grief so bad that you only get to share it when you're in your car. You only get to experience it when you're in your car alone, or you're in the shower.
Yeah.
Because
people don't want to hear about it.
To the dark, right? You get pushed into the shadows. Mm-hmm. Your grief becomes something that's pushed into the shadows, and it only gets experienced in the shadows. Think about that. Oh my gosh, that made me so sad. There are millions of people out here like that today.
Well, and it is sad for us specifically because we know what it feels to be on the other side, to have gone through the fire and the trenches, and to make it out, and to laugh a real laugh again, and to be able to tell stories about Sharon and our dad and Donovan and Austin, and laugh hysterically at how silly they were and how great they were without having the pain and the sorrow with it. And there are a lot of people that don't have that. Like, it is possible, if you hear anything from the show, you don't have to just survive. anymore.
Yeah.
You can really live.
Yeah. You don't have to suffer alone. You
No.
don't have to be in the shadows. We're here to say that you don't have to be in the shadows. That doesn't have to be your path. We're here for you. We see you. We
Right.
are you, or we were you.
We absolutely were you. We
Yeah.
were broken and we were sad and I was angry. We were all the things. And and we got to a point, like Sharon said, I couldn't live. I don't think I could live. I don't think I could have lived like that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not something you can sustain.
Okay, now I'm just stuck in the sadness, so I have to share it. Could you imagine being that person and then the pandemic?
No.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you were way back when to with where Donovan and you were so angry, and then now trying to go through a pandemic. I mean, that added to it. That's the compound we're
Well,
talking.
I think then those are the people that you see that become those social media warriors and they go picking fights on social media with people
Yeah.
because they don't know what to do with their pain and
Yeah.
misery loves company. So, oh, you believe this? Well, how about that? You
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
that's what the pandemic has driven people to the point where it looks like social media is just an ugly place now because there's no connection, there's no fun, it's
Yeah.
all just fighting and no, that's not what it is, it's this, and no, I don't believe that, it's that. And
By comparison, yeah, because we're all broken in the point.
yeah,
Okay, so here's the deal, sisters. If you're out there and you've heard this podcast and you've taken your grief into the shadows, we want to hear your story. We are great listeners. Reach out. You have the connection in the show notes where to find us. We would love to meet you in person and just have a conversation.
thank you for joining us again. Bye, friends. Hi, friends. Erica Honore here with Healing Starts with the Heart. Sharon and I are so glad you joined us for another great episode of our podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We want to let you know for more information, you can go to our website at healingstartswiththeheart.com. There you will find not only today's podcast, but all of our podcasts, along with our blogs, the information on the programs that we offer, and the Griever's Guide, which is something Sharon and I put together to document how we came to be your grief specialists. We also have a quiz to take to identify if you are truly grieving. And if you want to talk specifically with either Sharon or myself, you can schedule an appointment there. You will also find a place to join our private Facebook group at Hope, Heal, and Recover. Thank you so much for being with us. Have a great day, friends.